All right, welcome back to Weiner Update. It's Paul. Great to have you back. We're going to jump right into this episode. First, we see Noah and Summer, and they're discussing Sharon's secret. Obviously the one that she's holding over Nick's head about Sandra Allen dying. Now, they both think that Nick is not capable of what Sharon's accused him of on the tape, and they reach out to Courtney. Now, Courtney goes and checks the files and the records on the accident that happened so long ago, and she tells them that the accident did happen, but there's no mention of Nick at all. So the two of them are fairly certain that Nick is not responsible for the accident, but they decide not to approach him with this, and they definitely don't want to stir things up. We also see Dylan show up, and he tells the kids that he knows everything that went on. And he tells them that they're in over their head and to leave it to him. He really wants to get to the bottom of it, and he tells them to back off. In fact, he insists that they back off. Now, after Dylan leaves, there's a bit of chatting about whether they should back off or not, and Noah is the first person to push that envelope and say, hey, we should back off, go on with our lives. But before that, we see Dylan talking about what happened to Sharon with a message on the mirror, and he thinks it definitely means that Sharon's not a suspect. But then they tell him that Kyle is actually the one that wrote it. Now, Kyle being in the room, that sets Dylan off, and he sort of grabs a hold of Kyle, and they sort of have a bit of a showdown, but they convince Dylan to calm down and back off Kyle, because he was trying to push to see if Sharon was the person responsible. So like I said, Noah, after Dylan leaves, proposes that they all move on. And some people are okay with that, and some people are not so okay with it, but it does push Noah to do what he does next, and he meets Courtney at the coffee shop, and while they're at Crimson Lights, he gets down on one knee, he pulls out a ring, and he proposes to her. Now, this kind of comes out of left field. Obviously, the two of them are dating, but even with the two of them, I never really see that spark that makes them look like a couple that would get married. So we're gonna have to watch this one and see how it plays out and what it has to do with the whole mystery that's going on. We also see Nick confront his dad, and this is epic. Victor and Nick going at it. But Victor does make a huge point when Nick asks him why he did all the things, why the cover up. And Victor looks at him, he says, "You're my son, and I wanted you to have a future." And Nick rails against that, and Victor turns around and says, "Would you do that for your own kids?" And he says, "I bet you would." And it sort of puts Nick back on his heels a bit. So that's going to get really interesting. But Nick flies over to Sharon, and his conscience is weighing on him, and he tells Sharon that obviously the guy doesn't want to get blackmailed, so he's thinking of going to the authorities, and Sharon doesn't want any part of that. She urges him not to go to the authorities. What else would she have to hold over him? So this one's going to be really interesting. I want to see how that plays out, and if Nick's conscience does get the better of him, and what really happened on that night. We also see Vicky congratulating Billy and Chelsea while they're having like a romantic breakfast. Now, she tells, eventually she's talking to Nikki, and she tells her mom that she's not really okay with the whole engagement thing, and it's kind of thrown her off. And Nikki urges her to sort of think about what she really feels about the two of these guys getting married. We also see, what else do we see? They start talking about Victor, and they both know. They know Victor better than anybody, and they both know that he's up to something as far as Jack goes. And with Victor, he always, finishes what he starts. And so they think that it does, mean trouble for Jabot and trouble for Jack coming up in the future. You also see Gabe. It's one of those things where he can't leave well enough alone. He sees Billy and Chelsea having this romantic dinner. He basically calls them up and says that there's a crisis at Jabot, and they're to leave immediately. So they get up and they leave and they go see Gabe. Initially it looks like it's something that he's made up, but it turns out that somebody has hacked into Jabot's mainframe, and it looks very suspicious. In fact, Chelsea's files have been deleted. So he sends Billy off to, and that's to his benefit, but he sends Billy off to confront Vicky, and hopefully she isn't behind it, but has some ideas as to who is. Now we all know they're thinking that Victor is behind it, especially with his penchant for espionage, corporate espionage. Oh, Billy does actually speak to Vicky, and she does not know anything about this. In fact, Billy knows she's telling the truth, and he urges her to sort of spy on her dad, which obviously she's not okay with. They actually come to the point where they say, why don't we just declare a truce, because we know it's looking like the Abbotts and the Newmans are going to be in some kind of a war, and we don't want it to affect us because they're on good ground. In fact, it looks like they're starting to develop feelings for each other. So they come to an agreement. While they're doing that, Billy makes a crack like, we don't want a repeat of what happened last night. And right at that point, Chelsea shows up and says, what happened last night? So things are heating up, and we'll have to keep watching to see what happens. We also see Nick, and he is at the club, and he's throwing things around. He's not happy. He's not happy about what his dad's done. He's not happy about being blackmailed with Sharon, and call it bad timing or what, but Sage shows up, and her timing's awful. Nick turns around and just lets her have it and accuses her of being a gold digger who's just after a rich guy. Sage gets mad, and she's hurt, and she goes to leave, and Nick calls her back, and he apologizes to her, and he tells her that it won't happen again, and that he's going through a lot. Sage agrees, saying that they've all got a lot of secrets that are tearing them up inside. So more development on that relationship. It looks like they're that they have a relationship. It's just that not a lot of people know about it. We also see Nikki, and this is really weird because she intercepts an envelope that it looks like Victor's left for the person that he's dealing with. It looks like Nikki's playing sleuth and following Victor around, and she pulls open the contents, and it's got fingerprints on it. So we don't know what's going to happen there. And the last thing we see is Gabe, and he walks into Jack's office telling him he thinks he knows who is responsible for the espionage. We all know he probably thinks it's Victor, but lo and behold, Victor is in the office, and they both kind of look at each other, and Gabe wants to know what the hell he's doing there, and that's where we leave off. And the teaser for the next episode looks even bigger. So please stay tuned. Don't forget, I love the fact that you guys are sharing and subscribing. It means a lot to me. Keep doing it. I love it. We'll talk to you tomorrow. It's Paul. It's YNR Update. Have a great day.